Let me tell you a story about stones. It's a story about chaos and about gentleness. It's a story about love and insight. It's a story about power and how one act can change a whole situation. And the story starts off with stones, big stones, the kinds of stones that you wouldn't want someone to throw at you. And the story starts with Jesus standing in a marketplace and some religious leaders bringing to him some people, some stones, and a woman. And the story starts with Jesus in the marketplace and some religious leaders who are there. Now the religious leaders are trying to catch Jesus out, and they don't really care who they hurt in the meantime. So there's Jesus, and he's in this marketplace surrounded by people, and the religious leaders all turn up with this one poor woman who has been caught having an affair. And they throw her in front of Jesus, and they say to Jesus, look, the Old Testament says, Moses' law says that this woman needs to be stoned to death. And people all around start picking up stones, big, hefty stones, with which they're going to throw at this woman to deal out the justice that they think God wants. And the atmosphere is getting more and more electric as they say to him, what are you going to do, Jesus? And Jesus is stuck, because if he says yes, he becomes a murderer. If he says no, he's abandoning all of the stuff that he says he's here to fulfill, not do away with. People are holding their stones, people are looking at Jesus, and in the world's eyes, Jesus is stuck. And as the tension mounts and people are looking for a fight, they're baying for blood, Jesus is not stuck. And he does something that nobody expects. In the middle of all of the tension, Jesus bends down next to the woman. As he bends down there, he starts to draw in the dirt that's right in front of him. You don't know what he draws. All right. And as he's doing it, a hush falls on the crowd. Eventually Jesus stands up and he says to them, whoever is without sin can throw the first stone. One by one, oldest people first, they put their stone down and they start to walk off. Eventually, of course, there's nobody left. It's just Jesus and this woman. And she looks up at him and he says, has no one condemned you? And she says, no, my Lord. And he says, well, I don't condemn you either. Now, go and change how you live. I think what's so massively powerful for me about this story is the gentleness with Jesus treats everything. I mean, it should have escalated, by all human standards, it should have escalated and escalated. There should have been fighting, there should have been people booing, it should have been like some kind of crazy riot. But no, Jesus stops everything. He looks at this woman who's beside him, and instead of seeing her as, some political tool or some way to get what you want, or even worse, as someone with no emotions and no feelings, who's not actually even human, Jesus sees right into the situation and he sees the individual who's there. He sees her brokenness, he sees her vulnerability, he sees her tiredness, he sees her fear, he sees perhaps that not everything was her fault, and he stops everything in the gentlest way possible. I mean, imagine for a second that you are that woman. You've been caught and you're in front of a crowd of people. You'd want the earth to swallow you up. You wouldn't want anyone to be there. You'd want protection, is what you'd want. You want to get out of there. But what Jesus does is he puts himself in the same position as her. He's the most powerful person in this story by a long way. And he places himself in the same physical position as her, down on the floor in front of everybody. Possibly, he places himself in between her and the crowd. Suddenly she feels safe and protected. Suddenly she feels understood. Suddenly she feels that someone here knows who she is and truly sees her. You know, and even his response is to the crowd is gentle. He could have told them, given them what for, you know, he's the Lord of the universe after all, but what he does is he gives them the way out. He says to them, if you are without sin, you cast the first stone, and suddenly they realize what they're doing, and one by one they leave. You know, there's a moment in my life when I was feeling like there was chaos in my head. One of the most horrible moments of my life. And I was looking for God, and I was asking, God, are you really here? Are you really around? And I was sat on a staircase in a house, and I opened up my Bible to a passage in John's Gospel where Jesus says, I no longer call you servants, I call you friends. And I literally felt like he was sat beside me on the stairs. I mean, I knew he wasn't there, and I knew he was there at the same time, and I could feel his arm around me, and I couldn't feel his arm around me at the same time. It was this incredible, real, gentle moment. I think we underestimate the revolutionary power of gentleness. For me, gentleness is about seeing people, it's about understanding people, it's about moving at their pace, holding back anger and judgment and war, and about being seen and heard. It's about peacefulness. Gentleness is incredibly powerful, and often we see it as weak. But sometimes it can be the strongest thing we can do to say, you know, let's just take everything down. Let's deal with this one person and make sure they're okay. And I think acts of gentleness actually show us quite a lot about who God is. If we're thinking about becoming more like God and becoming more like we have God's character in us, then I think the more and more we will become gentle. We'll be able to de-escalate situations. We'll be able to look at individual people and who they are, why they have acted the way they've acted, and just be able to say, you know, maybe this person needs some space. Maybe they need some time. Maybe they need forgiveness. Maybe we need to treat them gently. When we do that, we become like God. We act like God does. Don't we need a world that is more gentle? If there's one thing we don't need, it's a world with more confrontation, and more war, and more hatred, and more aggression. Don't we need a world where people feel like people are being gentle with them? So I guess my prayer is that we become like that we allow God to grow that fruit of gentleness in us, that we become less judgmental and less argumentative and fiery, less warlike, that we become more understanding and more patient. And this fruit of gentleness is about how we treat each other. Lord, would we be able to treat each other gently? Would we be able to pause the confrontations and pause the arguments and see what's really important and look down into who people really are? Would we give them space? Would we give them time? Would we give them love?